Hey, hi, thank you for watching this video. And in this video, we will be discussing about consumer rights. So it's primarily from your class 10 CBSE economics, primarily SST. So we'll be covering all the pointers. We'll be doing a very quick review and a revision of this chapter and what are the essential things. And even if you're, learning this chapter for the first time, this video will help you understand the basics and make sure that you will be able to understand the important terms and remember it clearly. So the first thing here is consumer rights. So what is consumer rights? So rights is basically it's your rights. आपका अधिकार. In Hindi, what we call adhikar. So consumer is basically when it's basically customer. When someone is purchasing something from from a buyer, from a producer, they have certain rights, and that is what is called consumer rights. The consumer in the marketplace, on the market, consumers are often exploited. You have been a victim of it, and you definitely know someone who has been cheated by buying a product or service. Even especially when you're buying something online, you will definitely see someone has ordered a phone and they have got a soap bar. So that is what we call exploitation. That is, they have been promised something and they have been given something else by the seller. Individual customers are often placed in sensitive situations. The consumer movement is an attempt to improve this situation. So to avoid this exploitation, consumer rights are enforced and put forward by the government, and it is also enforced by the government. So let's understand about the consumer movement. What is consumer movement? The consumer movement emerged as the result of consumer unhappiness with the sellers' unfair business tactics. This happens when your sellers are taking you for granted and they want to cheat you to make a profit. So to avoid it, consumer movement came forward. There was no legal structure in India, especially because in developed countries you will see there is there are a lot of consumer rights which protect them, and the consumer or the buyer can sue them if they get any if they're not satisfied with the product and services. There was no legal structure in place to protect the consumer from exploitation in the marketplace. It took several years for organizations in India throughout the globe to raise public awareness. So that's the brief about what is consumer movement. So what caused, what was the reason that people came on, they did not come onto the street, but why they started this consumer movement? The main reason was food shortages. Right now you can order something, or you can order food online, you can order on Swiggy, Zomato, but back in 20-30 years ago it was not possible, it was not available. There was food shortage, there was black marketing, there was hoarding, and there was adulteration of edible oil in India in 1960s and organized consumer movement. So whenever there is adulteration, you have definitely heard that due to adulteration people have suffered food poisoning and they have died. So what is hoarding? Hoarding is basically you are just accumulating raw materials, you are accumulating things which you need to sell on the market, and you need to understand there is something called supply and demand. So when there is less supply of any material in the market, the demand will go up, and if the demand goes up, the price will definitely rise. And when the price rises, if you sell that product, what happened during the COVID is that you will make more and more profit. But if you do it artificially, that is what we call hoarding. And black marketing, food shortages, I think you are able to understand. Until 1970s, consumer organizations were mostly concerned with publishing articles and organizing exhibits. They organized consumer groups to investigate ration store fraud. This movement was successful in putting pressure on commercial enterprises as well as the government to reform business practices that were unfair and against these are the important things. So whatever that I'm highlighting, these are the keywords that you need to remember. So you can you don't need to mug up everything. You can just remember these keywords, and when the question is asked, or the question is asked during viva, you can answer them. You just need to remember the keywords. Finally, Indian government took a significant stride forward, and with the passage of Consumer Protection Act. So this act was established by the Indian government. In which year? You have to remember the year, that is 1986. What was the act? Consumer Protection Act. The short form is COPRA. 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 Please remember that if someone asks you what is, explain what is COPRA, you will say Consumer Protection Act, which in which year it was enacted? It was enacted in 1986. Okay. Please remember this. This is very important. So let us understand, let us learn what are the consumer rights. What rights do consumer have? So they have five rights. These are the rights that they have. A consumer has whenever they are buying a product or service. A consumer has various rights, including right to safety. So whenever you are buying a product or a service, you have the right to safety. You cannot be harmed. You have the right to be informed about the product and services, about the warranty and all the information, how the product or the service is being provided to you. The right to select. No one can force you to buy a product or service. And also the right to seek redress. Yeah, that means that you have the right to ask for compensation, to ask for replacement, or for to ask for a return, and also the right to represent. So these are the five things. If you do not remember these five things, just remember that, okay, you cannot be harmed. What are the things that cannot be done to you when you're buying a product or service? You cannot be harmed. That means you have the right to safety, you have the right to be informed, you have the right to select. You can select the options. You have the right to redress, and you have the right to represent. So these are the five things that you need to remember. What are the other things? Consumer forums or consumer protection councils are a variety of organization in a region. They provide guidance to clients on how to file consumer cases. So if you are a victim of consumer fraud or anything, if you want to file a case, so there are consumer forums or consumer protection councils which will guide you. The government also provides financial aid to them in order to promote awareness. So in case that you are a victim of it, how do you deal with it? You go to consumer forum or consumer protection councils under COPRA. What is COPRA? Consumer Protection Act. Repeat after me. What is COPRA? Consumer Protection Act. CO for consumer, PR for protection, A for act. A three-tier quasi-judicial system. Quasi-judicial system means that this is not exactly the judicial system that we have, but it is a parallel judicial system for resolving consumer issues that has been established at the district, state, and national level. So if there is a consumer forum case, you do not go to a district court or civil court. You don't go to a civil court. You don't go to a criminal court. The typical court that we have, you don't go there. Where do you go? You go to the under this act, quasi judicial system. You need to remember this word. Quasi judicial system has been set up for resolving consumer issues. So please remember this. This is very vital, because we have the courts that you see, the High Court, Supreme Court. They are court. They hear the cases which are of civil matter and criminal matter. They do not hear consumer protection, consumer issues. They don't hear these kind of cases. The United Nations approved the UN guidelines for consumer protection in the year 1985. On a global scale, it has become foundation for consumer action. So that's about it. These are the important things. And how many nations are part of the UN Council? So there are 250 member organizations from 120 countries. United Nations, they have what? They have UN guidelines for consumer protection. Which year it was launched? 1985. There are 250 members from 120 countries. So these are the important things that you need to keep in mind. You can download the notes from SkillYogi and you can jot down these notes, because these are the important points. So before you go and file all the cases that you want, there are certain things as well. A consumer has also follow certain responsibilities. They also have to fulfill certain responsibilities. While customers are aware of their rights, you must know your rights. While purchasing a product or service, you must make sure that you fulfill certain things. That means that if you're doing any transaction, there has to be a cash memo. So what is a cash memo? This is basically a proof of transaction. This is a proof of what? This is a proof of transaction, that okay, there is a transaction that has taken place between the buyer and the seller. So if you do not have any cash memo and you have just bought a product or a service from someone, then you cannot prove it that okay, this is the amount that I've paid for it. You cannot prove it, and you cannot go to consumer forum. This is very, very important, and it has to be a pakka bill. It cannot be a kacha bill. Make sure that you remember this. When buying anything, everyone should be attentive about the quality of the goods as well as the guarantee of the products and the services, because there are terms and conditions which come. That is why you will see there are a lot of ads on the TV, and you will see that terms and conditions applied. So you have to make sure that you are reading and you understand the terms and conditions before you buy the product or service. While buying, look for logos and certification. especially ISI and egg mark. That is why you will see when you're buying milk, you will see there is a logo, FSI logo. When you're buying a biscuit, there is FSI logo. And COPRA is not without flaws. The consumer redressal procedure is growing more and more complicated, costly, and time consuming. Anything related, especially in our country, which is related to judiciary, it takes a lot of time. It is very complicated because we have less resources. A lot of cases are there, a lot of fraud is going on, so it takes a little bit of time, but you have to be patient, but it does work. So how are we taking the consumer movement forward? On 24th of December, 24th of December has been launched as the National Consumer Day. Please remember this. 25th of December is what? Christmas Day. So if you are not able to remember 24th of December, just remember when is Christmas? It is day before Christmas, right? So 24th December is National Consumer Day in India. On this day in 1986, the Indian Parliament passed the Consumer Protection Act. Why it is celebrated as National Consumer Day? Because on this day in the year when 1986, the COPRA, again COPRA, COPRA was enacted, or it was passed. That is, Consumer Protection Act was passed. Okay, in India there are 700 consumer organizations, but approximately 25 to 20 are running well. That's India, it works, but still remember these numbers. 700 consumer organization. If you don't remember this, it's perfectly fine, but you need to remember that 700 organizations, consumer organization or consumer forums, are working in India. Only with the active participation of consumers can consumer movements be successful. It necessitates a voluntary effort and struggle on the part of everyone. So that's the basic understanding of consumer rights. I hope you have understood it, and if you are not able to understand something, please go back and repeat all the section and watch this video again. If you have any question or queries, please let me know in the comment section below. And again, if you want to download the notes, everything is organized and prepared for you on SkillYogi. You can go there and download all the notes for which will definitely help you with your exam preparation. So thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next video.